Hey, if you've got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition Home Gadget Geeks Thursday night. It's 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, March 9th, 2023. If you've got this any other time than that, you've got the recorded version. Hang tight. We'll get started here in a few minutes. I see a couple of you out there. Brian's checked in the chat room, and you can as well. If you're on our live page and you don't see the chat room, there's a link. I think it's down below. At work, it's above. Jay, I should have made them both the same. So I wouldn't have to remember. I think it's down there. And click on it. It'll take you to YouTube, and you can join in chat. Brian has already said good evening, so good evening to you. And Jay, Franze, good evening to you.
Well, thank you, sir. Good evening to you, and happy to be back.
Good to have you. Ken's checking in. Hey, Ken, welcome. Jay, we traditionally do a beer bourbon. You're in Kentucky. I couldn't help but so I was out at Wall to Wall, which is our big box
I see some
bourbon
melted
store.
wax.
We got some makers. I'm trying not to cover that up. Some makers cask strength, 110 proof, which is 55%. Already poured in the whiskey glass, and it's just a beautiful amber. You're in the amber waves of bourbon there in Kentucky. What do you got?
Yeah, we bathe in it.
As you put fires out with
Right.
it.
Today, over in that area, is Buffalo Trace.
Mm.
So I have Buffalo Trace, and
Ooh,
my color is a little
little
diluted
less.
because I've got some
Yeah,
ice in it today.
yeah. Little Buffalo Trace is, I think, has a little lighter, but it's a. I really like it. It's kind of a. It's a good. It's a good sipping bourbon. You put ice in it, but I'll drink it neat, and it's just a good. It's got a good taste. What do you like about it?
It's pretty just even. It's smooth. It's even. There's nothing jumps out at you. When you're not in the mood for that bite, I think it's a good one to reach for.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the others I have over there just have a real bite, and I do like that. I do like the bite, but for tonight, trying to talk to you all night, it should be a little bit smoother.
Yeah. No, it's this. I should probably actually get some water. This is this is cask strength. I think I've underestimated
You're drinking
the
fire.
the power of it. I'll
Yeah,
have to
this
maybe
is
I
my
can
backup over here too.
maybe yeah. I should probably let me.
But no, I like it. It's good, and it's not far from me, so I get to drive by and could go to the facility and pick it up if I wanted to.
Yeah, how far is Buffalo Trace from you?
It's about an hour and 20 south of me. So it's not
Hmm.
far. I mean, my office is literally right next door. When I say right next door, I mean almost sharing the parking lot.
Really?
So it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Woodford Reserve is right around the corner, and Jim Beam is also around the corner.
Can you for Buffalo Trace? Do they sell it
Yes.
in their store there in their gift shop or
I've
whatever?
never bought any there, but everybody keeps telling me to just go by there and pick it up. I want to go by for a tour.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
they have a beautiful campus where like Jim
Yeah.
Beam is. It just looks like an industrial, with manufacturing cars or
Yeah.
something.
Well, they they make a lot of
Yeah,
liquid.
theirs is
They
not pretty.
I think Buffalo Trace is Sazerac Trace owner. I think Sazerac. Yeah, they're a Sazerac company. And Sazerac also has they've got a bunch. They own a bunch of those. I'll look those up here in a second. But yeah, I agree with you. Buffalo Trace is a great starter. Like it's a great, first thing in the evening, or if you just kind of want a light sipping bourbon, I think it's a good one.
Yeah,
Jefferson's the one I gave Mike Uyghur. That's another
the
one that's kind of
oceans.
well, the Oceans is their premium brand. Yeah, it's a little bit of a gimmick,
See,
they
I've yet to try it, but yes, gimmicky,
yeah,
but I've yet to try
it's super gimmicky. Yeah. They put it on a boat and float. In fact, I just drank my last bottle of. Oh, here she comes. Thank you. This cask strength's a little steep.
it.
Huh? A little strong. Yeah, my voice will be gone by the end of the night. Thank you. Yeah, the Ocean is. We just finished. I just finished a bottle, and I told the kids, "Hey, my birthday's coming up. If you want, it's like It's like $75 to $85 a bottle. But I noticed they're on voyage 28, and they give you a guide you can open, and it shows you where the ship went. Oh yeah, guys, thanks for checking in. I don't know why all of a sudden my chat comments. There we go. So Joe's checking in. Evening, good to see you.
Hey, Joe.
Tony is wondering. So since John Biggs, John did tell. Well, maybe this proves the point. John told me he wasn't going to be here tonight. And Tony says, "Seems John Biggs and I don't show up at the same time. Neither does Superman." Makes you think. You ever seen John Biggs and Tony and Superman all at the same time? It's very possible that one of them is Superman. Um,
You mentioned
yeah,
the $75. I'll tell you
yeah,
one thing about being here in Kentucky. Nothing is $75.
really,
I mean, everything is extremely reasonably priced.
yeah. Makes you want to, makes me want to drive and buy a year's worth, while you're down there.
Yeah, I'm here if you want.
But no, you get, yeah. Well, no, I understand. Um,
You have a connection.
I have a connection there. Um, uh, we're actually, I kind of think we're on the backside of the bourbon bubble, and it hasn't popped yet, but I think I'm seeing a lot of bourbon sitting in the store for a long time and some pretty high prices. And so I'm kind of hoping we're on the backside of it. This Makers was 30, which is, on sale. It's normally 40, 42, something like that. The regular Makers, if you were just going to, if you just kind of wanted their entry level stuff, I've gotten it as cheap as 21, and that's not too bad. That's 20 is kind of the point for me. If it's 20, I just buy it. I don't even think about it. I'm gonna just pick it up. It's there, right? 30 to 40. I mean, at 50, I'm kind of thinking about, there's just a few bottles that I'll buy at 50. But yeah, we definitely need to roll through your part of the country.
Most of mine are gifts at this point. I think when you move here, they think that you drink bourbon, and here you go.
Need to be educated.
Speaking of education, I got a book too. They gave me a book.
About bourbon.
Yep. Yes, sir. I got every
Oh,
bourbon trinket you can have, all the glassware over
mhm.
there, and the sipping glasses, and everything, the
Yeah.
stones, and all that stuff.
You put them in the freezer, and then it chills your drink but does not dilute it.
Yeah, I don't have tonight, but I usually have the round and the square ice cubes.
Yeah. Yep. The king ice is the square ones, right? And that's kind of what we use. I've kind of just I used to do ice, but now I've just kind of got a neat.
Yeah, time
Never
and place.
dilutes, never dilutes, and it's pretty tasty. So I have 4 beers from Erin. She sent. I was going to do one of them tonight, but Micah was supposed to be on tonight. She had to bail. You so graciously at the last minute said you'd join me. So Jay. Thanks for coming on. And I thought, well, Jay's in Kentucky. I can't do beer. Can't do beer. I mean, bourbon flows through the streets. So,
It's sad, but it pretty much does. Everything,
oh,
especially if, like, I go to Louisville a lot for meetings, and every sign, like, all the brick walls are painted with bourbon. I
yeah.
mean, everything is bourbon everywhere down there.
What's a shame is my in-laws used to live in Moorhead, so just outside Louisville, and um, then they moved just not maybe an hour from you, not very far. We'd fly into Cincinnati, and then it was an hour south. And I didn't drink bourbon in those days, so I didn't even know. Like we were in the land, we were
Didn't know what you were
there.
missing.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing. Like I'd be a lot, this this would be a lot worse
My
if I'd
memory's bad
started
enough.
drinking when I was 30. It'd have been pretty bad. I have been backing off a little bit. Just in here, everybody did dry January, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And then February came around. I'm like, maybe
Maybe.
I should. Maybe I should. So it felt good to take a couple days off. So All right, guys, welcome. Good to see you out here. I think everybody's checking in. Joe, we saw Tony a little bit earlier. Joe's checking in. Ken is checking in, and Brian as well. If you want to check in, get that done. We're talking Chat GPT tonight. That'll be kind of fun. I've done some stuff with it. We'll have a conversation about AI. See where that goes. All right, Jay, let me kick this thing off. Here we go. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 565 with guest Jay Franze, recorded on March 9th, 2023. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. And of course, we'll post a show with a few show notes out at the Average Guy. TV. Don't forget this month's affiliate sponsor is Nespresso. Use the code MQU328. Get $40 off the machine if you haven't tried it yet. Jay, are you a coffee guy? Do you do much coffee? No coffee?
No coffee at all.
Well, if you were gonna start drinking coffee, I'd recommend this Nespresso, right? Little pod, throw it in, hit the button. Not Keurig. Keurig's okay. Nespresso, they spin it, they froth it. You get some really good. These guys are coffee snobs, and so you get some really good, tasty coffee. They have coffee from Colombia and Mexico and different. You can get espresso shots. You can get all kinds of stuff with it. So if you're ever going to do it, use that code MQU328, and a few of you have. Get $40 off the first machine. I think they're also throwing in a capsule dispenser. Give it a try. Check out Nespresso.com. Thanks for their affiliate sponsorship. And, of course, big thanks to Sammy Collison, who that's my daughter, joined me last week. And she's actually just getting back from work right now. But we talked a little bit about library tech. In fact, Neil sent me an email. Neil, thanks for your email. He said, wow, makerspace in the library, very nice. Libraries are very valuable for those not well to do. And that's good as well. Yep. Our village library is small but well connected, and you can even check out videos. Cheers to you, Neil. Thanks for writing that in. Big thanks to Sammy for coming on, and I'm just always surprised what's going on there at the library. And so I'm sure you'll hear more. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. If you're finding value in this podcast, you want to give back, join us at theaverageguy.tv/Patreon, and you can do that as well. Jay Franze is with me, Franze and Friends. Jay, welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. Thanks for filling in at the last minute. Micah Librant was supposed to join us tonight. I was actually going to have Micah and my wife and celebrate International Women's Day, which was yesterday. Those plans fell apart on that, but we can still celebrate that, and hope of those listening did as well. Support those ladies. But we got you pinch hit. So 2 guys. Okay, we'll pull it off. How are things over there at Franze and Friends?
Things are good. No, we've pivoted ourselves, and the new format of the show. We've always done leadership, but now the focus is in our strength in our career. So we're focusing on artist development. So Franze and Friends focuses on artist development. We bring guests in to talk about it, talk about different facets of it, anything from microphones and equipment to strategies and planning out album launch or things like that. And then we also, over at the other show, Jay Franze, it's jfranze.com, but it's the Jay Franze Show. We interview people from the industry, typically artists or musicians that play in and out of Nashville.
Is Fola still helping you out over there?
Fola helps out when we do more of the leadership style stuff. Cool. But there's a girl, Jen, who helps out with the artist development stuff. Nice. And you still enjoying it? Oh, no. I mean, this whole new thing we got going on is fantastic. I love it. So we're interviewing people that I've worked with over the past 30 years. So I had a gentleman from the Oak Ridge Boys on the other night. That was really cool. So a big turnout of fans, as you can imagine, with somebody from the Oak Ridge Boys. Yeah. So that was good. We've never had that many people in the chat room at one time. That's cool. Yeah. Pretty tough to manage when it's flying that fast, isn't it? It's just like, I'm like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. And then we had the band Von Ray on nice. the debut episode. So that was really nice. Cool. So they were in the TV show Smallville. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I was just listening to some Steely Dan the other day, and that they'd be in that.
I'd forgot Michael McDonald came out of Steely. I mean, he had worked with Steely Dan, and then of course he started working with the Doobie Brothers, and influenced a generation of music in the '80s. I mean, everybody wanted to sound like Michael McDonald for a
Right.
while. You know, um,
Talk about a unique voice.
yeah, yeah, I know for sure. I can't understand a word he's saying, but it sounds good.
Yeah.
It's just kind of fun. It was fun to kind of go down memory lane a little bit with that. And then what I love about like where we are today is kids, you didn't know any of this stuff that was going on with bands. Like you kind of you'd have to read, industry magazines or be in the business or maybe hear. Now MTV changed that a little bit where you got a little bit of news from them. Not like we do today, right? But in those days, you didn't get very much of it, especially in the 70s, right? I mean, it was one of those eras where there was so much. I mean, I think if you think about independent growth of artists, the breakout is really in the 70s and the 80s, right? 50s and 60s are dominated by record companies and manufactured bands and kind of those kinds of right stuff that's put together. Bands really start breaking out in the 70s and 80s to get the deal, right? Their own record deals. It's almost like the internetization of music that happens in the 70s without the internet, right? Where people they're going. So you start looking and you start seeing all these stories. Well, the beauty of it today, we can get all that on YouTube. Like you can go back and watch all those documentaries
Right.
on them on YouTube. Will you use so how do you find like for guests to come on that show? How do you find I know you've worked in the industry, you just making phone calls? Is that
At
what's
this
working?
point, yes, that's what I'm doing. I've got the band Von Ray was a big one. I wanted them to be the first episode and everything, and they came on and they were fantastic. And you want to talking about the story of a record deal and how it is not what everybody thinks it is,
Mm,
and how it
yeah.
actually really made them miserable.
Mm,
So it was a very good conversation. I really enjoyed it. And then the guy from the Oak Ridge Boys was just somebody I reached out to and asked if he'd
yeah.
be on the show.
Yeah.
This week we have the guitar player from Reba McEntire. He's one of
Oh,
the
cool.
best studio musicians in Nashville. So he's played on probably every record you probably ever
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
that's
it's
those
fun.
those studio musicians. You don't realize how much they contribute to, and they may be a line somewhere now with the advent of we don't get albums anymore. First as
You
kids we
get
could read them
Spotify.
on vinyl, right? And then they went to cassettes, and that got even smaller. I guess CDs got a little bit bigger, but you could go through, and yet the studio musicians who you think of like Toto. They were all just studio musicians. They were all so good. They're like, hey, we got to play together.
Their keyboard player owns a studio. I say here in Nashville. I work out of Nashville,
Yeah.
but he owns a studio there, and he's a super nice guy as well. So maybe call him up one day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, right on. Tony says in chat, this is funny. He says Jimmy Fallon was the last contestant on last night on The Voice and sang a Michael McDonald song and basically said, "I can sing anything because no one understands what Michael McDonald was saying."
True.
That's very true.
Jimmy Fallon can sing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, he's that kid's got some talent when it comes to that. I mean, he can do a bunch of genres,
Oh yeah, no, he's.
and
I like him.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of talent there. Well, congrats on getting that started, and I think that's going to be. I mean, I think you're gonna because as you get some big name guests on, then that will maybe attract others as well who are like, oh yeah, I want to be on that thing.
Yeah, we got a band from LA that's going to be on in a couple weeks, and it's an all-girl band, and it just reminds me back in the '80s. Every single thing in the band is pink.
Oh
Their
yeah,
outfits are pink. Their instruments are pink. I mean, it just looks like a hair band out of the '80s.
yeah,
But it's all girls, and they're just super talented. So be excited to have them on. I mean,
yeah.
some of these people are just super talented. Just fun to talk to.
Yeah, you just and it's crazy. I mean, when you watch that talent in action, I was watching a YouTube video. I don't know why it just appeared up. Maybe because I've been doing music documentaries, and not even related to knowing you were coming on. But I've been watching some music documentaries. Watched someone on Journey the other
Oh
day,
yeah,
and one
that
on
was my favorite
Foreigner.
band growing up.
Oh yeah, well, there's always drama too, right?
Oh
There's
yeah,
always
you
there's
should, you
always
should hear
drama.
some of the drama that we hear on these shows.
Oh, I bet. No,
Oh,
yeah. Oh no, I'm sure that there's
and
tons of it.
it surprises me how much they share. Like when I talk to these
Mm.
people, the things that they say on the show, I'm like, I would be thinking you don't want to say that, or but they don't care.
Statute of limitations. It was like
They
25 years ago, right?
Yeah, they just don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah. Well, I think it just goes on, and it is a tough, like when you think about the most successful bands, you're gonna, I mean, that kind of talent, I think, just difficult to work with, difficult to stick with. And then in the 70s and 80s, and probably now, they get rich, and then it's a hard lifestyle. I mean, we start thinking like, oh, how great it must be to be fill in the blank, right? Nah, they're lonely. They're doing drugs. They're drinking a lot. The lifestyle requires a really, a very strict. You got to be here doing this. You got to meet these people. The more famous you are, the harder it is just to get quiet. Everybody's always wanting a piece of you, and you're like, I just want to be by myself, right? And I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't, not in a million years.
The,
Not worth it.
the guy from the Oak Ridge Boys, when I talked to him, super nice guy. I mean, very nice. But I ask everybody before the show, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And he's like, no, I'll talk about anything you want. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it's not like I knew much to ask him about his time in
Yeah.
prison or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
But he got on the show and we're talking, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he's like, "Oh yeah, back in those days, I was really on, heavy on drugs, and
Mhm.
things were rough, and
Mhm. Yeah.
since then I've gotten over." He just opens up about all this stuff, and I couldn't believe he was willing to talk about it. And you talk about the being on schedule. They call me from their dressing room. I get these
Mhm.
weird calls and places. Like I talked to an artist this week. He called in from Caesar's Palace. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're playing a show tonight." So okay, well great. So now you're calling me from your hotel room in Caesar's
Yeah.
Palace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you hear the whole
Yep.
crew behind him. You hear makeup coming in, fixing them up, and it's just funny. It's just funny the life they live.
Mhm. Yeah. It's not their own,
No,
right? I mean, they're at that point they become the talent, and
right?
they're told, go do this, get that, perform this way, type deal. Yeah, well, more power to them. I'm glad they do it. I would never want to. I kind of like my quiet. Nobody knows who I am for the most part. Maybe a handful of people, but it's pretty nice that way. So, well, super cool. Thanks for it's fun. Like that era, that 70s and 80s era. That's when I grew up, and so it's just fun to see where they've gone. Some of it's tragic, you know,
Yeah, there's been some rough
So
ones.
yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
mentioned Journey. I mean, that was the band I grew up on. That was my favorite band, and I actually did some work in Nashville with a band that they took me behind the scenes or behind the stage, and I got to meet Journey.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was very nice of
Yeah,
them to do that.
yeah, yeah. That's super cool. Super cool. Of course, their meeting, like that happens every night. They parade people in front of them. Hey, meet so and so. Um, who did I have? Who was I talking to? One of my interns, her dad works for a local radio station here in Omaha, and she got to meet Taylor Swift last time Taylor was in
Nice.
town. And Taylor has an assistant that goes behind her and gets the names of everybody, and then Taylor writes little notes and sends them back, kind of thing. And so, like, hey, thanks for, they write little clues so that it feels personal. But Taylor's kind of that way. She's kind of that way. She wants her fans to feel special, right? And so it's pretty impressive, I think. If you can, and she has built a monster fan base, right?
Well, she gets a
So
bad rap, but she's very talented and she's very
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
I've never met her, but in town, she's people they disregard her a lot, and but she's
Mhm.
super friendly, super nice. It's just her. I met her dad at the record label. He was nice to me.
Yeah. Well, she's she's got. I mean, with her fans, she's good to her fans. You
Oh
know,
yeah, and
and
like you
so
said, she
it's
doesn't forget it. Well, she has
yeah.
somebody helping her, but she doesn't forget
Oh
about
yeah.
me.
Well, you'd have to. You'd have to. I need like 10 people reminding me. I can't remember anything. I meet people and 2 minutes later, I'm like, sorry. I've already forgot your name. Well, speaking of who doesn't forget names, let's make this transition.
All right.
We spent some time talking about Chat GPT. I think I said GPT chat earlier, but it is Chat GPT, and it's kind of come storming on the scenes as it's generative pre-trained transformer 3 is what that is, or Chat GPT 3 is some have been calling it, large scale language model developed by OpenAI. Came like just screaming on the scenes a couple months ago, and everybody was freaking out about it. Seems like it's settled down a little bit, Jay. But talk a little bit about you said, hey, have you talked about that yet? I'm like, well, not really on the podcast. And so I'm kind of interested. I want to start with, how are you using that? Like, where are you finding value in it right now?
Okay, good. Because I'll tell you, is this is an amazing tool, scary and amazing at the same time. So, and like you mentioned, it started, really heavily a couple months ago, but since then there's been so many others popping up, and including at educational facilities. So, I mean, people are embracing it even though they're concerned about it. But how am I personally using it is I've done a couple things. I program my phone. So we all know you talk to the lady in the phone, right? But I've programmed it to change from talking to her to change to talking to ChatGPT.
Oh,
So now whenever I ask it something, I get a much more detailed answer.
yeah.
So that's incredibly impressive, especially when I'm in the car using like Apple Play or those type of things. So I can just activate it the same way I would activate the other. Now I'm activating this one, and the responses I get are great. Where with the other service, it was hit or miss, and most of the time it was a
Mm-hmm.
miss.
Apple. This is an Apple phone, right? So we're
Yes, I'm
we're
using the
talking about
iPhone,
Siri. Yep, the iPhone.
and
Yep.
so that has been working very good. And other ways I use it, I mean, I've been teaching people, so I teach people how to do show notes, or I teach people how to come up with titles or topic ideas. And it's just amazing how good it is when you work with it. It's not great out of the box. I mean, you have to massage it a little bit. So, say you're talking about a particular subject, I can go in there and say, hey, I want you to write something on artist development. And it'll write something. And then I'll say, okay, good, but not what I was looking for. And then I ask it to massage that a little bit. And it will. And it'll just keep going as
Mhm.
detailed as you want it to. And to the point where it gets close where you're like collaborating with the machine. So who's getting, as far as credits and stuff, who's getting the credit for writing that piece at that moment?
Mhm.
So like my wife is a graduate student, and I told her she wanted she's very smart, she's doing very well, she's a history major, and she wanted to do something the other day that she didn't know what it was. And I said, well, just ask this thing. And she's like, no. She refused to talk to it because she's like, that's a form of cheating. And to me, it's only a form of cheating if, because you'll Google an answer.
Mhm. Mhm.
So why not just, it's essentially the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's what you do with the information you get that makes it different. So if you reach out for the information and then again you tweak it and you massage it and you keep working it until it's, if nothing else, it's a collaboration between you and this device.
Yeah, this ethical question of, is it cheating or not? I always, when I think of calculators,
Yes.
like when calculators came out. And there were some people at the time, we would never, today we would never say a calculator is cheating, right? We'd be like, oh yeah, with scientific calculators, advanced calculators. I mean, we just would never say that. It's interesting now to make that switch to, in this language model, while it's being trained by data, it's not necessarily bringing that data back in whole and copying it down as it's writing it, right? It's trying to write it into a natural language model, right? So, as an example, I asked it, tell me everything you know about the Home Gadget Geeks podcast, right? And it found it. And it said the Home Gadget Geeks podcast is focused on technology and gadgets that can be used in the home. The podcast is hosted by Jim Collison and is a part of the Average Guy Network, which is a network of podcasts that covers a wide range of topics related to technology. Not bad, right? I mean, this is a
So
great
far, so
start.
good.
Not bad. Home Gadget Geeks podcast covers a wide variety of topics related to technology and gadgets can be used in the home. Some of the topics that have been covered in the podcast include smart home devices. That is true. Home automation, home security systems, home theater systems, and much more. Right. So it goes on to talk about what we do on the podcast. It's all correct. Now it's all general too, right? It's not like it's specific, but it says Home Gadget Geeks is available on a variety of platforms, including Apple, Google, Spotify, and others. Listeners can also access the podcast through the Average Guy Network website. Not bad, right? Overall, and then it always does a conclusion statement. They must have changed this because for a while it was always writing in conclusion. That's how
Right.
you could tell
Yeah.
it was it was this, right? It was this tool. In conclusion, you found it. Now it finished with overall. One of the things I could do with that then say is what are some great topics for this podcast? Now, what is interesting about it is it remembers the question I just asked it. So it comes back and says the Home Gadget Geeks podcast covers a wide variety. Now, it gets repetitive, right? Have you noticed that with it?
It
Is some of
does.
this?
Unless you tweak your wording to trigger a different response.
Yeah. So when you say that, like, give me an example of how might I tweak that, or what kind of words might I add to get it to give me something different back?
Well,
Do you
maybe
think?
change the phrasing to say something like, provide me with 10 topics to discuss on this week's episode.
Okay. Provide me with 10 topics.
And then out of those 10, you'll probably find 6 of them are worthy. And then what you could do is pick one of those, and then you can now have it write up your descriptions and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I said, provide me with 10 topics, and it comes back. It says, sure, here are 10 topics for the Home Gadget Geeks
Right.
podcast, right? The latest developments in smart home technology, tips for building home theater systems, home security, the benefits and drawbacks of using voice assistants in the home, how to create a smart home on a budget, the role of technology in home energy efficiency, blah, 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 right?
Now, to be fair, that's amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're not going
No.
to find an assistant in your office that's going to not only come up with it that quick, but come up with that good of a response.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And it's okay. Let's go back to the ethical concerns of this because it is taking what it knows and what it's learned and then spitting those back out to you. I could say, and I've done this for show notes, like when I had John on from Channels, I said, tell me everything that you know about Channels DVR. And it wrote a statement for me right now. Yeah, it's pulling it from the internet, but it's not. I did a quick search to see if I could find that exact text. So a reverse search, take some of those sentences, put them back into Google and see if Google will find them. Couldn't find them exactly as they had been written. So I think you're right in some regards. What's the difference between that doing it originally and this doing it originally? Like, I'm just going to read articles from the internet. I'm going to write. In fact, the chances of me plagiarizing, I think, are higher than they would be with ChatGPT. Don't you think?
Well, you're going to be definitely more familiar with wherever you're taking the information from. But yes, I mean, to again, it's what you're feeding it that creates that difference in my head. So it's like we used the example the other day that they have the one where you can type in a description of a painting and it'll come back and deliver you a painting. And people were getting upset and talking about copyright infringement because you're copying somebody else's painting. But if I told you, hey, go ahead and paint me a picture of a little kid sitting on a park bench bouncing a tennis ball with his dog and do it in the style of Picasso. Now, is that a copyright infringement? Because I've told it enough differences for that to be a unique painting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the same thing here. If you're telling ChatGPT to create something based on your ideas. For another example, I use this device in teaching mode a lot, and I did the other day write a joke in the style of Louis C.K. And it came back with a paragraph of a joke that was like Louis C.K.
Huh. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how original that joke is, but it was still pretty cool that it was able to do it. It
Yeah.
knew what to
Yeah.
do. And one more thing on that is the guests, Scotty Simpson. He's the guy from the Oak Ridge Boys. I did a lot of research on him. I found everything I could find out, and I put my notes together for questions to ask him. But after the show, I was utilizing the tool, demonstrating the tool for people, and I said, all right, let's see if it'll write show notes for this person. And I typed in the information, and to me, I can't confirm this, but I believe the only way it would know this information is if it scanned the audio from the show. So again, I don't know if it does that, but the only way I could find that information was things that he said during the show. So it had to have scraped it somehow.
Yeah. You got to kind of wonder, right? I mean, all right. So I just put in, write me an intro paragraph in the style of Jim Collison, right? So let's see if this sounds like me. It says, sure thing. Here's an intro paragraph for Home Gadget Geeks podcast in the style of Jim Collison. Hello and welcome to the Home Gadget Geeks podcast, where we talk about all things tech and gadgets for your home. I'm your host, Jim Collison, and today we've got a great episode lined up for you. I'm not sure I would say it that way, but that's okay. We'll be discussing the latest developments in smart home technology, from voice assistants to security systems and everything in between. We'll also be sharing some tips and tricks for building a home theater system. Now, you notice here, it's putting like in the stuff above it, it put these ideas, these topics in the same exact order. Security, like today episode discussing the latest smart home technology, voice assistants to security systems. Those had been listed in that same order above. We'll also be sharing some tips and tricks on building a home theater that had also been listed above in that. The ultimate movie watching. So grab your favorite tech gadget and settle in because it's time to geek out. I'm
It
not
does
sure
a lot
I'd
of
say
those type
that.
of statements at the end.
Yeah, about all the cool tech that can make your home a smarter, more convenient, and more enjoyable place to be. I guess that's how Chat
I think
GPT
you
thinks
were
I sound.
there up until like maybe the last sentence or two.
The last. So let's geek out.
Yeah, no.
It's time to geek out. Yeah, well, but that's interesting. I mean, again, bring it back around when we think about this in the style of or in the to look like. If a painter took a painting and he took a Picasso, I mean, there are fakes of those classics that people have made, right? And people have to look at them and say, no, this is definitely a copy. In God, it's such a fine line,
But
right?
there's things
Between
inspired by
copying
all the
and
time.
replicating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, okay, you're in the music business. Like, how hard is that to not be? I mean, how much music has been made, right?
You can tell it to go out there and write a song for you, and it will. I mean, you can tell it to write the musical changes, write the melody, and it does. I mean, again, it's extremely impressive, but
Yeah,
scary at the same time.
yeah.
It really is.
If I said write a song in the style of Michael McDonald, it'd be like, what did you say? What did you say?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I know, right on. So one of the things you mentioned, it's pretty good at answering questions. I don't find it super helpful because it doesn't have the most current information. Like you couldn't ask it about a news story from yesterday, but you can historical. It's got a lot of history in
Quite
it,
a bit
right?
of data.
You said you put it on your phone in you use it like a search engine, right?
Yes. Yes.
And what's it doing for you differently than Google or Siri or any of those would do?
To be fair, I mean, I have the Apple devices, and Siri is the one on there, and I
Yep.
use it all the time because of that. But on my desk here, I have the Alexa, and upstairs we have the Google one, and so we have all of them. And I would say the Alexa or the Amazon one is the probably the most accurate, the better of the ones that we get answers from. You ask it a question, and it provides you with an answer. A lot of times I ask Siri the questions and I don't get the answers,
Mm-hmm.
or I get, anything from you'll have to unlock your phone before I can answer this,
Yeah.
or, no, I don't know that, or here's what I found on the web. And then you have to read something. Using it in this manner, basically just creating one of the shortcuts and telling you what to access. And to me, that has delivered a much better response, more in the
Mm,
lines of what you
okay.
would get with Alexa.
Actually, I threw this in chat. I'll include it in the show notes. I actually wrote a blog post. I wrote this back in February when this thing kind of got popular. How to make the most of Chat GPT, tips and tricks for using a language model for the average guy. The entire article, not the entire, most of it written by Chat GPT. Just to be fully transparent, I wanted to write something about, I wanted to use it to write an article for itself to say how to use stuff. I so it described itself, and then I was asking questions, and then it was answering them, and I would put them in, and sometimes like you, I'd ask for follow up. Some of the advice though on asking questions, it still says, and this is from itself. It says to ask, make sure you provide, it can provide answers from a wide range of queries, right? To get the best results, it's important to ask clear and concise questions. Yes and no. I've asked pretty vague questions, and it still brings back some pretty good information. Avoid vague or open-ended questions that could lead to ambiguous responses. Be specific about what you're looking for. Pride is Provide as much context as possible. And so I think the one thing that it's really good at is a long question. Like you put a long question into Google, and it's going to try and word match to it, and it's going to try to provide a sponsored link. Right, that's its job,
Right.
right? Just to be fully transparent. Anything else you found on the search side of things that you found particularly helpful?
As far as the search side, not really. But to tag on to what you just said about the long-tailed questions, that's what I've found the most value in. So you could say, I mean, you can start off with, hey, write a 300 word article, like you were talking about your
Yeah,
blog post. You write a 300 word blog post that's SEO friendly, that focuses on this topic, and include these three bullet points. And so you're telling it the extreme specifics of what you want. And it's going to pump out an article. And then if there's a piece of that article that you don't agree with, you can either choose to now rewrite it, or you can just tell it. Like you said, it's an ongoing chat.
yeah,
So you can go back and say, you know what, please replace two with this, and it will replace that one section for you.
yeah,
Or write this section, you can tell it that's too vague. Please be more detailed in the response of number two. And
yeah.
it will. And to me, I had a guest on a little while ago. It was a broadcaster who had just written a book. And I did the research, found everything I needed, and then turned to the chat and asked it to go ahead and see if there was anything I missed. And it went and it found the book, it found everything that was fairly current. So I was pretty impressed with the results it came back with.
Yeah.
And now you mentioned the blog article, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're upfront and telling everybody that it assisted you in that article. So how do you list the author of the article on the blog? Is it Are you listing you? Are you listing you with the assistance of? I mean, that's where people are
Yeah,
getting a little
yeah,
hairy, and
yeah,
I still think it's you, but because you don't say, well, I solved this problem with the assistance of my Texas Instruments. You know,
No, true. I didn't. I figured out this math on my calculator. You
yeah,
don't add that in, right?
right.
You wouldn't even if you use Google. You wouldn't say I use this. I guess you would cite if you were gonna
Oh, yeah, only if you
cite
found
some
something
things.
specific.
Yeah, if you were gonna do some quotes. I honestly, as you were saying that, I was like, I don't think on this article I gave it credit. This was the first one I wrote, and I wanted to see if anybody'd give me any like, hey, you know, is that right now? Christian read this, and he goes, "Is that like? Did you?" Right? He spotted it right away. I think a lot of folks would will as well. Now that I say it, and you go in there and look at it, you'll see it all over. Right? I mean, it's repetitive in some
Well, as soon as
spaces.
you know the trigger words.
Right? Yeah, yeah, right on. I think I wrote another article called. Let me see if I gave credit here. Streamlining blog writing with ChatGPT: the pros and cons of using AI to generate text. And I think, did I give credit here? No, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and, I think,
But that's just it. I mean, if
yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
depending
I
on
probably
what
should
you're
now.
putting in there, to me, the more personalized you're making it, you're just getting assistance. It's no different than do you use Grammarly?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when
I
you're
do.
using Grammarly and you write something that's a sentence might be a little jacked up, it says, consider replacing with this sentence.
Right.
Do you replace it?
Almost always.
And do you give Grammarly
No.
credit for your article?
No.
So
Yeah.
again, I
Yeah.
mean, to me,
Yeah.
it depends
Yeah.
on what you're feeding
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, right on. Well, it's going to be a debate, and I think it's going to be a debate that's going to rage for a while. And certainly in the academic space, this has rocked a lot of worlds. And there's been a lot of academics that have come down on either side of this. I think we all expect them to say, no, this is cheating. And there's been some academics who've been like, nope, this is
Right. This is
absolutely
just
use it.
another
Like
tool.
it is just another tool. Listen, it makes my writing a ton better, just to be honest. Right. Then I curate it, I cut it, I move some things around, I'll add a few things to it. I did add some sentences on this where I thought they were kind of hokey. And so I went back in and changed them. Right. But the majority of it came from it as opposed to me.
You want to know another great way to do it, right? You say your show notes. Say you type maybe 3 paragraphs of a show note. You do it yourself.
Yeah.
You copy that, you paste it into ChatGPT and say, tweak this, make it SEO friendly, make it better. And it pumps out, 3 new paragraphs. Then you copy that and put it in a Word document and you run Grammarly on it. And you say, check this for your grammar.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's an entirely new piece than what you put into it, but it all stemmed from what you put into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all original thoughts from you, right?
One more thing too,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
wife, I said she's a graduate student. Her school just implemented their own version of it. I'm sure it probably runs on this, but they implemented their own version. They're not shying away from it. They know you're going to use it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's our tool, and this is you can use it all you want, but they're still telling you that hey, look, we can tell if you're using it to write your paper or if you're using it to help you write your paper.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure there's ways you can tell. There's probably
Oh,
back
yeah.
end
Yeah.
where I'm
Well,
writing, but
that weekend, it came out the next weekend. Another AI developer wrote an AI tool based on Chat GPT to detect Chat GPT work.
oh, what was that?
Right.
It was called. Oh, I just saw it. I forget what it was called, but yes,
Yeah.
he did that.
Yeah. In a weekend. He just coded it up
Yeah,
over the weekend,
he was a doctor or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and listen, I'm, it's been interesting as I've used it. I actually have an article that I had a writing service come to me about 6 years ago and say, "Hey, we'd love," and if you have a website, you get this spam all the time. We'd love to put an article that's relevant and full of SEO on your site. And I was like, all right, that sounds good. I mean, so they wrote this article. It had some references. I checked it out. Nothing was going to sites that, everything worked. And I put on site. Man, I don't know what happened, but that post does 90% more hits than every other post on my site. So I started pulling it apart, deconstructing it, and using it with ChatGPT's help, expanding on each one of those sections and creating now more material from that one, and still, going through it, proofreading it, make sure it makes sense, make sure it's helpful, those kinds of things. And what I wanted to see was, would people land on the original article, and then for each one of those sections, so I have a paragraph, it's 10 gadgets to use in learning. So it fits really well to the rest of the stuff on my site, right? And uh so far people aren't clicking the next one down, like, oh, more information, go here. Now they're staying on the site for 4, 5, 6 minutes when they're so, first I thought maybe it's bots.
So
you
they're
know
reading it.
it appears to be reading it. They're not going to the next links. Now I just started doing that, so we'll see where that gets picked up in some of those. So what it's kind of helped me do, I don't like to write, but I love the content that comes out of it. And so around some of that around some topics, it's helped me create some helpful content that I'm like, I would normally not publish, but because it's helping me with the content, I don't know. It's kind of so, producer Bob in chat says definitely prefer Grammarly versus a potential AI based Clippy avatar. Yeah, I don't know. I actually like Chat GPT better than I like Grammarly. It's more, for me, it's more holistic as opposed to just doing word by word or even phrase by phrase, right?
Grammarly's more accurate. It's more accurate
Okay.
with the corrections. I
Yeah.
think ChatGPT is, and Anthony mentioned Chat GPT 0 is the one that detects it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But
Um,
yeah, the ChatGPT to me, it's great for coming up with the ideas. It's great for helping you write something. It gives
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you could do anything. Like you said, hey, come up with 10 bullet points about this subject. And then you could write the topics, the paragraphs
Yeah.
that go under each
Yep.
bullet point.
Yep. Yep.
So, and then you can use
Yeah.
Grammarly to tweak it. And then by the time you're done, you have something that sounds pretty decent.
One of the things I was thinking about is I was driving home today knowing we were going to talk about this topic. One of the things I was thinking about is how practical could it be for the review of a everybody knows this, if you've been listening to this show a long time, my favorite hardware product ever is a Drobo, right? They're they're on their way out. But say I wanted to write a review of a Drobo and a particular model number, how helpful that be for me if I had one of those to then put some things in and have it add some additional. And I can always take the stuff out or change it based on it, but it could give me some things. Right now, these are words other people have written, right? So we have to be. But would it be things I would have discovered anyways?
I think
What
if you do any sort of research, it will.
And chances are, Jay, I'm gonna write something that's gonna sound like in a space where there's so many words, and if you put enough monkeys in a space with typewriters, eventually they would type War and Peace, right? I sometimes wonder, like, I, what if I was plagiarizing something and I didn't even realize I was plagiarizing it, just because there's already so much content out there, you know?
Well, coming from the world of music, especially commercial music, everything is based, especially in Nashville, it's a number system. So every chord is referenced to a number. So the first
Mhm.
chord of a scale is a one, the second is a two. So you got your number system, and every single hit is a one, four, and five progression. It doesn't have to be in that order, but they're all based on that. And you can throw in the relative minor, which is the sixth minor. So you've got those four chords, and you can just about figure out any song on the radio
Yeah.
because
Yeah, any hit
as long as
song.
you figure out one of those, you can figure out, okay, well then it's this scale,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing. So if you tell it to write you a pop song, and it does, it you can tell it to write the chord progression. It's going to come back with a 1 4 5 in some variation of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple things that I think people don't know. I mean, we think of it, what you and I have been talking about, what it's most known for, right? Answering questions, creating text. Couple other things, and I wrote about, no, Chat GPT wrote about this in the article it wrote about itself. The third one would be language translations, right? So this is, I didn't realize this out the chute, but it supports English, Spanish, French, German, and Chinese. And they may be adding more languages to that. So you can take a piece of text, drop it in there, and say, translate this to German, and it will do it for you.
Yeah,
And I haven't checked the accuracy of it, but
I wouldn't know
I
how.
imagine, yeah. Well, take it out and put it in Google Translator,
Right.
right? Make it translate back. By the way, those are some super funny things sometimes when you have AI translate it and then translate it back. Have you have any need for translations? Have you tried that at all?
Yes, but very rarely.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
especially at work. There's occasionally I'll get stuff that comes in typically in Spanish or something,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I just go ahead and use Google Translate and figure out what it is.
Yep, yep.
So for me, that's been helpful. And this will be helpful. It could be extremely helpful. You're talking about writing a blog article. What's to keep you from taking a blog article you've already written, copy the entire thing, put it in there, and say convert to Spanish?
Yeah,
And now you've
yeah.
got you've increased your visibility of that article.
Well, and like Google Translate or Translator, I think Microsoft's Translator and Google is Translate. Um, they're not language models. They're doing translations. I mean, yes, they're doing translations. I wonder if it does, like, wonder if it tries to get the right grammar or do better grammar. I need to do some testing with this because we do podcasts in most of those languages, if not all of them. What's that list again? Let's see. It was English, Spanish, French, German, and Chinese. Yeah, I do podcasts in all those languages. So would be interesting to see if in the translation itself, if it's a good translation, is it putting it into a Spanish language model and then writing it in a way that makes sense? Because some of those translations I've heard, we've done those kinds of things. In fact, sometimes when we use those tools, we say translated by Google so that people know, hey, we threw this into a translator. This wasn't a real person, right?
Right.
And people always go, yeah, we knew. Right?
Yeah,
You're like, I
we
know, but
figured that out.
I know. We
It's
need
at
to
least
say
an
it.
effort.
Yeah, no,
I
I want
wonder
to
if it
say
would
it.
translate from Boston to Nashville.
Have you? Did you try? So Joe's asking, anyone played with the Bing version of this? I got it in preview and asked it a few questions about free beaches in Grand Canyon, but that's it so far. Have you messed with the Bing version at all?
Not, I haven't gone to the website and messed with their version, but to be fair, Microsoft is one of the owners of ChatGPT, so it's going to be all over their products.
Yeah, yeah, going forward, and it does have footnotes. That's a different, like, so the OpenAI one we've been talking about, the one that kind of launched it all, still available. They have a paid plan now. I think it's $20 a month if you want to pay for faster and more access to it. The Bing version, I haven't found. I've used it a little bit, but I just haven't found it as helpful. If you haven't used it yet, you need to. I think you still need to get access to it. You have to request access, and they'll grant it. Out the gate, Joe, it wasn't very good for me, and some of the things I asked it to write a blog post, and it wouldn't. you know, and so it was like, yeah, no, I don't really write blog posts. So I think Bing is doing some Microsoft is doing some different things with it. Certainly worth looking at, and the search results are interesting. So I need to spend some more time doing it. We mentioned this earlier. It also does a pretty good job of text summarization. So we talked about expanding text, give it 3 sentences and say write 900 words based on this,
Right.
right? Or you could give it a paragraph and say write a better paragraph of it, or you can give it a whole bunch of text. I think there's a limit. I don't think you can like feed a whole book to it,
Right.
but
No, I think it might be 300 to 500 words somewhere
yeah,
in that
something like
ballpark.
that. Yeah, there's a limit to it. And you can say summarize this and it'll bring back the main points. It's pretty good at that. Like that's one of those things where if you had a meeting and a whole bunch of things were done and you wanted to like, hey, what were the now otter.ai does this very nicely. In fact, if you go to the show notes for this show, you'll see there's a feature in Otter that brings out the major points that you and I talked about in this. and it will give you points with timestamps. You can click on those timestamps, it'll take you right to the audio part. That's kind of cool. And it gets more than half of those. I mean, more than half of those are good. Like I delete the bad ones, but the good ones, and you go, oh, now all of a sudden, summary of the show, it does it automatically. I do a few edits. That would take me 3 hours if I was going to do it myself. That thing processes it in 20 minutes.
I was
You know,
at Podfest, and what's the software that does all that stuff for you? Generates your blog.
Otter,
No, there was another one.
Swell.
Something show, I think. Cap show.
Oh, Cap Show.
And so to me, this has been better than Cap show. I mean, it'll analyze your stuff. It comes up with the points just like you're talking about. I mean, it's been very good. I've had no
Yeah.
complaints with it. And when there is something bad, you just tweak it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or make it rewrite it.
Well, that's
Like
tweak
copy it. Like, yeah.
tell
Hey,
it,
I didn't
hey,
like that.
rewrite,
Can you
rewrite.
rephrase it?
Yeah, and it
And now
does.
I'm going to say, can you rewrite it in the style of Jim Collison?
Right. Which is funny, right? I was
It's
looking. There was
hilarious.
another one. I was trying to look it up. I can't seem to find it. But I sent one to my wife because her biggest complaint with it was it's getting stuff from the internet and it's not citing anything.
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
telling you where it
Yes.
found it. And
Yeah.
if you ask ChatGPT to cite it for you, it tells you it cannot do that.
Mm.
So it flat out tells you no. It's not. That's not what this is for. But there's another one, and I don't remember which one it is. That's why I was trying to look it up.
Yeah.
But there's another one that does the same thing, and if you ask it to cite it, it will. And it not only cites it, but it'll do it in whatever style citing you want. So if you want an API or APA or whatever you wanted, and it will go ahead and cite it in that format for you.
Yeah. Um, Bing will cite as well. So you can automatically, you don't have to tell it to. It'll give you links. Now, what it's getting ready to do is compete with Google for moving things up so you see them, right? So it's going to want to get those links in there so it can charge for those links. I mean, obviously, right? So it's an interesting, the last in the article, the last of five, because if you ask it for a list of things, it'll always give you five. That's kind of another telltale sign. You're like 5 or
Hey,
10.
give me 6.
You can tell it that,
I know.
right? Or give me 7, right? Whatever. As a personal assistant, right? It says, finally, ChatGPT can use as a personal assistant. It will help you with a wide range of tasks, such as scheduling appointments, setting reminders, or even making reservations. To use ChatGPT as a personal assistant, provide it with clear, specific instructions. Be sure to include any relevant details, such as the date and time of the appointment or the name of the restaurant you want to make a reservation at. ChatGPT can be a useful tool to help you manage your schedule and stay organized. You haven't done that yet.
I have
I
not.
haven't gotten into using the AI. I know Google's been doing this for a while. Hey, make a reservation for me at Timber at 6:00 on Saturday. And it's supposed to make the call and call them or whatever and get that done. I haven't done that yet. Have you done anything like that with it?
I use Siri for all that stuff, but I don't use it to make a phone call for me. Yeah, I do use it for all of the reminders or add this to
Yeah.
the calendar
Yeah.
and all of these things. Look up the phone number and then it'll say, "Would you like me to dial it for you?" Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I use it for all those things, but I've never had it actually make the call and try to schedule a reservation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I haven't yet either. Have to look on that. Couple in that article, a couple tips and tricks. We mentioned this already. Be specific in your requests, but you don't have to. Like that's the crazy thing. It's not going to not give you information if you're not specific. It just won't.
It's just going to be vague information.
It'll be sometimes it's specific. Like it's crazy what it can do sometimes. It says keep your question and prompts concise. Again, it's wanting is best, the best information it can get. Use proper grammar and spelling. By the way, this is itself telling me what the chip. I've used terrible spelling and it's figured it out. Like, you're like, it's doing some correction on us, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's Grammarly on steroids is what it is.
Yeah. Here's the big advice: review and edit the output. right? The importance is review because it doesn't always get it right. I mean, there's some specific details about me that I got wrong. When I asked it about me, I was kind of digging in. Listen, this thing is really good. Like in my world, right? I'm the Clifton Strengths community manager for Gallup. Clifton Strengths is a very specific tool. It's a tool we have a lot of information on the web about, and I've spoken a lot about it. A lot. There's hundreds of hours of me out there talking about it, right? Um, it's spooky good at strengths. Like you can in both strengths specific to Clifton Strengths, our product, or just strengths in general. This concept of self development, right? Leadership development, team development. It's scary good at like giving advice on some of those things. If you ask it, like, some things about yourself and you give it some things you're good at, it'll give you some pretty good advice, which is a little weird.
Well, I've written 2 books on leadership, and I've punched in a couple topics into ChatGPT, and it's written a better paragraph than I put in the book. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
would have no problem feeding my information into it and having it, give me better ideas and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked it a question like, okay, my Clifton Strengths top 5 are a Ranger, Woo, Maximizer, Communication Activator. If I were going to, as a podcaster, what kind of advice would you have for me about how to use my strengths for the job I'm doing? That's the question I asked. And it took each one of those strengths and gave me this, yeah, pretty generic, but most coaching is kind of generic anyways, right? And it gave me some really good things to do based on each one of those strengths that was good enough that I could tie it back to like, yeah, that's probably something we said, you know. So it's tied in pretty well.
I had a guest on the show that I had to research. I did not know enough information about the person. And when I put my list of things together, and then I told Chat GPT here to go out and find more information about this person, and it came back with almost everything that I had found, but it had one other thing in there that it mentioned a name, and I was like, I have to find that. I cannot just ask about this name. I have to research it and find it on my own. I wouldn't trust the name, and I did all the search, and I could not find that name anywhere. So I definitely did not bring it up during the conversation. But the other information was everything I had found, everything. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is very impressive.
It's impressive for sure. Joe says before long, it may just be able to do the whole podcast for you.
They've done it.
Yeah.
They've done it.
Yeah. No,
Matter
a
of fact,
converse. Go ahead.
I don't remember what it was. They did an entire YouTube video. You can go find the YouTube video that they used ChatGPT to come up with the content. They told it to turn that into a script. It turned it into a script. I mean, telling you exactly, at this point, such and such enters the frame. And then they used a computer generated video creator to create the video. So the 100% AI through the entire thing.
Mhm.
And it's like a 10-minute YouTube video.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to take the model as it is, and then I'd love to feed it in specifically everything I've ever said on podcasts and train it that way. And then it it could generate in theory, I mean, it's a lot of content. It could generate for me specific content. So I could say, "Hey, I want you to write this." I mean, yeah, I mean, we're joking about in the style of Jim Collison, but then it would really be in the style of Jim Collison, right? And it'd have much more information about me than what it well, maybe it's got that already.
Well, if it's truly
Right?
scrubbing audio, then think about
Do
how
you
many
think it is? Do you
podcasts
think it really is?
I have no other way to explain how it had the information it did.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
I mean, no other way.
Okay. Well, it's going to cause me now this weekend I'm going to have to dig in a little bit to see if I can find some things maybe I've only said or like I mean, I have a ton. The even in the
Well,
um,
have
you
producer
know,
Bob help us out.
but oh no, hold on. Yeah, so producer Bob says I'm hearing that artwork made with the style of X isn't a copyright violation. Well, any written work could be copyrightable. You know.
Bob,
Um,
help us out and find out if it scrubs audio.
yeah, yeah. Um, Joe says the deep fake AI stuff's pretty crazy, and it is for sure. They generated conversations between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs. It even gets the speech inflections pretty accurate. In
Yep.
10 years, it'll be indiscernible from the
That's
original.
that's the part
Yeah,
that's scary right there.
yeah. It's not. That's not open AI. I mean, deep fake is different, right? It's a different technology, but um, yeah.
That's
No, I've
that's
I've
scary.
thought a lot about. Yeah, I've thought a lot about a personal training model. Like, in other words, so I've got my own, like I would have my own version of ChatGPT that I would train. It would be in the cloud somewhere, and it would listen for things that I've said, or you know, I would train it, right? And then who knows? It may be
Picture
smarter than me. I'm sure
picture
it is. It's
be,
it's not hard. That's
be, picture that being the box on your desk that listens to everything you say.
yeah, but that's where things go wrong. Because like as humans, we do some messed up stuff,
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff goes wrong
Catch
for
me yelling
sure.
at my kids or telling a dog to stop barking.
Mm-hmm. It starts swearing at you, starts getting frustrated and angry, all those things. Um, in another blog post, I was asking it for what are some of the drawbacks, and it said some of the potential drawbacks to using it when you're writing blog posts. One is that the generated text by a model may not always be entirely original, so it admits to that, like may not be entirely original. As the model is trained on a large corpus of text, it may generate text that's similar to existing content. Additionally, the model may not always understand the context of the prompts or seed text, resulting in the text being not relevant or appropriate. Then, one more drawback is that while the model can generate text that is highly readable and engaging, it may lack the personal touch and unique voice of a human writer. This can make text generated by the model feel less authentic and less reliable to the reader. It also can be wrong, can be flat out wrong. So I think there's some, I think there's some caveats in there. It's a tool. It's just a tool. You can't turn it all over to the tool. You still got to do some
Right.
work. It sped up my writing though immensely, immensely. You know. What else? Anything else, Jay, on that? As we're thinking about wrapping this up, would you listen to a podcast? Let me ask you this
No.
question: that was generated
No.
on a subject by Chat GPT?
No. I mean,
Why not? Why not?
wouldn't mind listening to it if it was delivered by a human, because it's the personality, and like you said, it's generating things that are similar to other works out there or other, you know, text on the internet. I think what makes it different is the stories.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
telling stories, so if you get the information delivered to you and then you go ahead and provide a story back, I think that's where the difference is. I don't think it's factual. Yes, um, it's the story that adds the human element. So that's where the difference is going to be. But one other thing that you mentioned that struck me as funny is we do a lot of very technical stuff when it comes to equipment like microphones and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I typed in the thing and I said, okay, give me the, you know, 5 dynamic microphones, you know, the top 5 dynamic microphones or whatever you want to tell it. And it comes back, like you said, with that very generic list. I told it, you know, please provide more detail. And it comes back with like the polar pattern and the switches that are on each microphone. So, I mean, it gets as detailed as you want to tell it to go, but it still doesn't tell you the story behind
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as of right now, there's still a need for the human behind it.
Yeah. Well, there's no emotion, right? There's no experience. There's no sadness. There's no happiness, right? In these things that all add, the other day, I had this dream. My mom passed away last May. And I hadn't really thought, I hadn't dreamt about her yet, hadn't had any of those. And she popped up in a dream. And it was a silly dream. It was just silly, right? So I was telling, I was telling my wife and my daughter about it. I started crying. Like I was like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, what's happening to me? It's been 9 months. Like I thought I had processed that, right? But that memory brought something back. And I came downstairs here, kind of hid, kind of cried for a while, right? But I talk about my mom now a little bit different than I did before that because I went through that emotional experience, right? That for whatever that did in my brain, right? Because it's just a chemical reaction of some kind in your brain, right? Whatever that did in my brain changed some things, changed some feelings for me. And that is, you can that's tough. Maybe someday a computer will be able to, with a neural net would be able to experience pain and emotion and be able to handle that and have it change it. But today that's still reserved for us humans, I think, you know. And listen, we worry about computers going off the rails. I think Joe was saying earlier, Bing, they've limited Bing so it doesn't go off the rails. Well, listen, if you said some of the things to me that you're saying to Chat GPT or to Bing, I'd go off the rails too. you know.
Make me start
Uh
questioning everything.
yeah, yeah. No, I'd go off the rails. We'll end it on this. Bob says, um, a new product, Mom GPT, the voice assistant that tells you to clean up your mess. And then he says, not a real thing yet, but
Voiced by my wife.
how great would that be? Just like I do you think would you want to live in a world? I like this kind of is some people think this is the goal, but in the A lady is trying to work her way in on this one as well. But so you wake up in the morning and she says to you, "Do you want me to tell you about your day?" And I think they can do some of that now, like what's on your schedule and some of those kinds of things. Like, I don't know if I want to know about my day at that point, right? Type deal. I don't know if I want a computer telling me like, oh, okay, here's all the meetings you have today. Maybe that'd be helpful to get thinking about them early.
I am all
Some of
for
those kind of things.
the assisted stuff. Like if you can tell me what's on my schedule so I don't miss a meeting, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I practicing all this leadership development type stuff, I find myself all the time preaching use your calendar, do these things. But if I do them, I put the calendar together, I do these things, and I never look at the calendar. So, I mean, I need the reminder to check the reminders, is what I need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but how could that be if your phone knows where you're at and it's listening to you from what you're doing and it's got some idea what's happening, it could know you're in the meeting or not. And then if you're in a meeting that you're not supposed to be in, it could send a message to your watch that says, "Hey, you're late. Like you need to get to the next meeting." Like,
I've actually had it send a message to me telling me, or not send a message, but I pick up my phone and it's got a message on there saying, you've only got 14 more minutes to get there.
yeah. Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Google's pretty good at that. Google is pretty good about knowing where you're at and how far away you are and like how long is it going to take you with traffic. That's something Google has nailed in their assistant, and it's like, hey, you got this meeting, it's across town, it's not possible for you to be there on time, do you want me to call and reschedule? That should be the next prompt, right?
But
um
to go back to your comment for one last thing, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah, no worries.
You asked me if I would listen to a podcast that was generated by AI. And if it was delivered by a human, like, because even if we did something as simple as the top five microphones, if you're delivering, you can use that the chat to come up with tell me the frequency patterns or tell me the switches or any of that stuff. And as long as you're delivering it and you're backing that up with some sort of practical purpose, like, hey, this microphone's good for vocals, this one's good for a kick drum, this one's good for a guitar cabinet.
Hmm.
Now you're adding some of that human element into it and you're telling me about an experience. You're adding the story piece to it. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to just listen to something read to me.
Yeah. Read a script, or Brian says about that. He says, if it were like headline news of the day podcasts, like AP News Headlines or NPR has one of those, right? AI driven, so stories. I mean, it's listenable now. If you had news stories driven by AI voices that were pulling those things together for you, maybe learning your preferences, some of those.
Yeah, like a 30-second clip or something like that.
Yeah, something. Yeah. Well, and I'd be like, tell me the news in the style of Jim Collison. I want
You,
to hear it in my voice.
you're going to laugh one day when it does.
It probably will.
Well, it can't be that far.
No.
Because what's the software, Descript, that you can
Yeah.
change the words and it alters your
Yeah.
speech?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, indeed. We got some interesting things ahead for us. And it is the first time, like I've been, everybody's like AI, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, like, look at when you say AI is not really AI for most of this stuff, right? Advanced algorithms or, some trickery in the programming. But this is getting pretty interesting, you know? And I've spent a bunch of time with it, and mostly around writing, because I kind of wanted to see could it write something that would get popular, or could it write something that would get picked up by Google and get a link, an important link, and drive folks to it. So far, the answer has been no, and there's been some thoughts that Google is able to detect this stuff and is actively pushing it down. I don't know how true that is, but so
So, do you think there's a back end watermark that we just don't know about?
it's possible. It's very possible. So they could go back and detect it again easily,
Yeah.
type deal. It seemed like that would be appropriate, right? A digital signature behind the scenes, right? That when you copy and paste it, it makes its way into it. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Mm.
Like when you take that text, I mean, basically you're copying like similar to HTML code. And if
Yeah,
you copy HTML, you can have a meta tag in there that says
yeah,
generated by ChatGPT.
yeah. Well, and its style of writing could have a code, could kind of have a code built into it, right? And then pretty soon it's cryptocurrency. Just kidding.
Nice.
Oh, well, it is. We'll end it on this. Joe says, "Read me the news in the style of Samuel L. Jackson." It would just swear at you the whole time. Is what it would do. It would just get mad at you and swear. Well, Jay, thanks for taking the time to pop out this evening. Give me an hour and a half of your time and to chat about this. I'd love to dialogue either in the post, however you're listening to this. If it's later in the podcast, head over to Home Gadget Geeks. No, head over to theaverageguy.tv/HGG565, and that'll be the post for this. And in the comments, I'd love to dialogue a little bit with you on this one. How do you feel about this? I think this one will generate a little bit of I
Ethical
hate it,
buzz.
I love it, whatever. I'd love to dialogue. Be sensible on this thing. But if it's on YouTube, just go down into the comments on the live, or I do watch both channels, the live and the recorded channel. For this, I'd love to dialogue around a little bit. Just get the conversation going. What do you think of this? It's been out a while now. There was a race to be, everybody wanted to talk about it at first, and I wasn't really going to spend much time talking about it. And then you said you want to, and I'm like, yes, let's talk about it. So thanks for bringing on. Can you stay for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me wrap this thing up. A couple reminders for folks hanging around. If you want to join in, we can take this conversation to the Discord chat as well. If you want to head out there, head out to theaverageguy.tv/Discord. You can leave me a message. If you can't make any of these things, or you don't want to leave chat, you can leave a 30-second message out at homegadgetgeeks.com. Just send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv, after you leave the message. And all you have to say is left a voicemail message. And I'll know to go over there and check it. I don't get too many over there, so I need a reminder to go over and check it. Don't forget the AverageGuy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. Plans start as little as $10, and they're still $10. Inflation-fighting plans over there at Maple Grove Partners. Check it out, maplegrovepartners.com. Then don't forget our March's affiliate sponsor, HelloFresh, here at the end. In fact, I just got a email from HelloFresh. They had been delivering on Sundays, and they said, "Sorry, we're not doing Sundays anymore. FedEx doesn't want to do that. We're moving to Saturdays. We'll give you $10." I thought, okay, that sounds all right. Thanks for the credit. That works for me. Really love what's going on over there. You can save as much as $110 on your first 5 boxes of HelloFresh and $40 on the first box alone. Check it out today. TheAverageGuy.tv/HelloFresh. Change the way I eat. I'm eating a ton better. And thanks, HelloFresh, for doing that. You can contact me, like I said, Jim at TheAverageGuy.tv, on Twitter at Jay Collison. Subscribe, rate, review, all that other stuff, no matter where you listen. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at TheAverageGuy.tv/live. I know you're dying to know, but next week, Mike Weger is back. So, well, and last time I said that, Jay, they thought I meant like back forever.
For good.
No, just for one show. Weger's back. Aaron Lawrence sent me some beer, so we'll be drinking Alberta beer and Mike Weger. I'm sure hockey will launch into the podcast somehow. We'll get some things done, and then Aaron's coming on at the end of the month. But we are live. Mark moved his. We're going to do a barbecue show that got moved into late April, so you want to hang around for that as well with Mark Robson. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at TheAverageGuy.tv/live. For those of you listening live, Bob, Brian, Joe, I saw Ken a little bit earlier, and Tony, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. Who's coming up on your, who do you have scheduled on the music one? Who's coming up?
Got Jeff King this Monday. It will be live. We stream live to YouTube and then
who's
edit the
what
audio.
What's Jeff's credentials?
Jeff King is a Nashville session guitar player. He is extremely, extremely good. Funny guy, but very, very talented. He's played on just about any record you could think of out of Nashville, but he also tours with Reba McEntire. So he's been on all the late night talk shows and all the touring. Any picture you see of Reba, she's always standing next to Jeff. So I'm very excited to talk to Jeff.
Cool.
So he'll be Monday night. Like I said, we do stream it live.
Does that intimidate you at all
Which part?
to have those famous people on?
No.
Really? Wow.
So-
Well, good for you. Good for you.
No. I think there was one. It was Miss America. That was a little intimidating to me. I don't remember why. I think it was the first show that I did by myself.
Okay.
Without a co-host. So that was a little intimidating just because I didn't want to screw it up.
I interviewed Miss Nebraska, who's went on to the competition. She didn't win it, but went on to the competition. She was fantastic. She's really nice. She's part of the Team H program here in Nebraska, and she mentors kids. I mean, she is salt of the earth, and was just super easy to interview. It was on the work, not here at Home Gadget Geeks. Although, maybe I ought to call her up and say, "Hey, Jonas, you got any gadgets that you'd like?"
Yeah.
Do you have anything
talked to two of
planned
them so
out?
far.
Anything planned out beyond
Beyond that, yes.
yeah.
Well, Jim, sir, yes, I do. I
figured you would.
the Pink Plastic Tastic or whatever that band out of LA is. They just played the Viper Room. I mean, they're super, super fun and energetic and talented people. So I'm excited about that. I just talked to Chad Wilson last week, he was the Country Music Artist of the Year last year.
Oh, wow.
So again, super nice guy.
Yeah.
He's the one who called in from Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
A few cool people.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I hope that works out well for you. That'd be a fun.
One of my favorites just happened. It's the latest one that we just released was Gina Grad. I don't know if you ever watched the Adam Carolla show.
No.
Gina Grad. Well, she's no longer on it, but she was the person who did the news for Adam Carolla.
Okay.
But she was just on the show and very, very friendly. Just a fun conversation.
Yeah, they're just people.
Yeah.
they're just people. Do you it's it's funny. I did um years ago we did more industry, like I had more tech industry, startups and some of those kinds of things coming on. So I went through a whole bunch of new startup folks, and some, we had Jamie Siminoff, who started Ring, on here at one point. So like we had some folks on here, and Jamie was delightful. I had a great Mike and I think interviewed him, had a great time with him. He was super gracious, right? And did a nice job. But one time, and I forget who it was, but we had this group. It was the president and one of his lead developers that came on. And when they heard the word podcast, they thought drunk fest. They thought we were just going to sit around drinking. I mean, when we do,
Right.
but we most of the time stay pretty sober, right? And they came, well, not they, the lead developer came just already pretty lit.
Prepared.
Yeah, he was lubed for the show. And so we connect, and we're talking to him and kind of goofing around, and the lead developers kind of acting goofy, and they're in their shop, so there's guys that are, they're doing funny things in the background. And so I open the show, and I lobby this, this question over to the president about tell me a little bit about the business. And he starts talking, and all of a sudden, if you look at the developer guy, he starts to realize, oh crap, like this is a real podcast. Like they're going to ask me real questions. Right.
Right.
And so I asked him, and I think I asked him a real question, and he kind of started off funny, and then you could see it kind of shifting to like, oh, wait a minute, there's chat room, there's people asking questions.
See him
in the
getting
chat
sober
room.
right away.
You see him sober up like that, throughout the show. They told me later, they thought, oh, sorry, dude, we thought this was, three guys in a brain, drinking beers and bros. I was like, well, I mean, it can be, but we still want to talk. It's an opportunity for you guys to talk about your product and do some of those do those things. But yeah, it was pretty hilarious. It's pretty hilarious.
The girl Gina, when she came on, now I guess that's one that you probably could have been intimidating. Yeah, Gina Grad. She's a super, super nice person. But when she was on, she does a lot of these things, and she does it for a living. So when she came on the show, she was very, had a lot of compliments, was very pleased with the way it went. And she was just super nice, just had a great, great conversation through the whole thing. I don't think she was expecting it to be as, like you said, more of a serious vibe, or at least taken serious.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think oftentimes they get on these things, they get set up by their producer or their agent or whatever. And then it's some doofus or whatever, right? And or whatever, right? And then so if you just when they get on one that's professional, they're like, oh, okay, this is kind of nice. I get to do that.
Well, she asked, she's like, how long does this episode last? I said, well, it's an hour. I said, it's usually an hour, and it could go longer if you want it to. And she was all set to be like, oh, I can't. I've got another thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, perfectly understand. But then after it, she's like, she stayed on for like 30 minutes afterwards, just telling me, I appreciate it. She goes, this was just so conversational, and we didn't have to go down a list of questions, and we get to talk about things I haven't talked about in so long, or haven't thought
that's
about.
Nice. That's
so
nice.
Like, okay, cool. So she told stories. She's been on a lot of morning shows and talked to me about the challenges that she had to face, not just trying to break into the industry, but to do it as a woman. Apparently, she was faced with,
oh, for sure,
a lot of the morning shows would tell her that they already have their woman, or they already have their girl, so they would only have one girl per program. So she had to fight through a lot of that. But when she made it to the Adam Carolla show, there was none of that. She said he was just super nice to her and allowed her to do whatever she wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Aaron Lawrence has been that way for me in a lot of ways. She loves coming on the show, and I love having her, and we have a good time together. Although she didn't like the way I made coffee She's threatened to not be my friend because I don't make coffee right, according to her. Have to mend that relationship when she's on at the end of the month.
I love
But
the way it smells, but I don't like the way it tastes.
oh, it's too bad. It's okay. It I didn't you know, my life has been a little weird. I lived in Germany for 3 years, drank no beer. I was in the military for 5 years, drank no coffee. Like, you're like, "What is?" I was a banker for 7 years, played no golf. Like, what is what is wrong with me? Don't
You
Jay,
do
don't
all these
answer.
things after the
Don't.
fact.
I do.
You go to
I
Kentucky,
do.
you don't drink bourbon.
No, I didn't. Yeah, that's right. That's right. My in-laws lived in Kentucky and I never drank any bourbon when I was there. So, yeah, maybe it's better that way cuz I tend to go to the extreme, and so maybe it's just better that those kinds of things don't happen. Yeah, I need to, I'll be honest, I could probably do more interviews like that in the tech space with bigger names. I think I interview fairly well, and so I think we could have some pretty good conversations around it. I just to be honest, and I know you know how this goes, getting them there is not what I like.
Especially when you do it live.
Yes. Yes.
Like
Yeah.
even Gina, as nice
Yeah.
as she was, we do the show live on Monday nights, and she booked it weeks in advance. So
Yeah.
we had that session booked, and then I got a message the day before saying, "Sorry, I'm double booked."
Yeah. Yep.
And she's like, "Can we do it next Monday?" I'm like, "No, I'm already booked." So
Yeah.
we moved it to Tuesday.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah. No, and it's where you you know where you're at in the pecking order by how much you get moved, you
yeah,
know. And it is we had scheduled Michael Hyatt to be on the Gallup podcast. You know Hyatt, Michael Hyatt, you know that name?
the name sounds familiar, but
Yeah,
no.
he's written some books. He's kind of a leadership guy. They use our Clifton Strengths Assessment. And so I was working with his handlers and his assistants. And, it was like, okay, we got this date. And then it was like, no, we need to move it to another day. We need to move it to another date. And then I got the call. Michael's not going to be available at all. Is it okay if we send Brian?
Right?
I'm like, no, I don't want
No,
Brian. Sorry, Brian. I'm not sorry, Brian. Not talking about you, Brian. Talking about somebody else, Brian. And I was like, yeah, no, I wanted Michael. That he was the guy. I probably should have just took Brian and went with it anyways, But at the time, I was like, after they had moved me down and down and down and down, you're like, don't you know who I am? They're like,
I've,
nope,
I
we
have
actually
a
don't. Yeah,
I
we
have
don't
a
know who
guy
you are.
coming up. His name is Andy Hull. He's the drummer for Clint Black,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
so I'm happy, excited to have him on and talk to him. But getting in touch with him was brutal.
oh yeah,
I mean, because I'm sure he's on the road and all this stuff, but the time it takes to get a response is crazy. So the
yeah,
last I spoke to him, I just said, "Hey, are you available on this day?" And that literally got the response right away. Yeah, I can
yeah,
do that.
yeah. Yeah, well, and they don't know. Like they get that first request, and you just don't know. I mean, I get folks all the time trying to be on our Gallup podcast, and I don't know who they are. And that first you gotta, and then I want to meet with them, but without leading them, because some folks aren't a fit. You're like, no, what you're doing, I just wrote this book. You should have me on, right? Well, no, probably not. Actually, that's not what our podcast is about. Are you coaching people? Like that's our podcast, right? We're not a place for you to sell your book, especially if it's not a Gallup book, right? So I understand because I get that, I get those requests all the time. Can we be on your podcast? Well, in it first I fight it, and then I'm like, well, I'll talk to him. Most of the time after I've talked, I've had just a conversation. Most of the time I say yes, but that initial response is no. And I listen, these guys are busy. I can imagine, they're like, oh, another podcaster. Uh, you know?
I had a guy just reach out to me. He wanted to be on the show, and It was, I guess, his handler or agent or whoever was reaching out. But I was like, who is he? What's he got to talk about? And he's like, well, he's the CEO of the company. I'm like, okay, what company? And it was
Yeah.
a printing company, a company that prints giant, stickers or whatever that you put on your wall. I'm like, that doesn't quite fit what
Mm-hmm,
we
mm-hmm.
do. But it was the fight of, well, don't you know he's the CEO of the
Yeah.
company?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard for sure to know. Yeah. I've got a couple that I've been putting off. We got the software conversion going on, and I'm booked solid all day fighting fires. And so I just like, I don't think I'm going to book another podcast till like April, which isn't that far away, just to be honest. It's coming up fast, right? But it's just like, so yeah, but once I do make the call, usually I'm like, yeah, that's a good story. I should follow up on this one,
well, we've
get it
got
done.
the two shows now. I mean, I fight not to call them two shows. To me, it's one show with
Okay.
just two different
Yeah.
things. One's
Yeah.
interview, one's more of a teaching thing. But the other one is booked a year in advance,
Oh.
and I mean a year.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
but these like the A-list people, they're booked maybe a month in advance tops,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't want to be booked any further out than that.
No, no. They have no idea what's going on or what
Yeah.
kind of opportunity they're going to have or where they're going to be, in that. Yeah, I did one. I just did I was interviewed on there on another podcast, another kind of leadership business podcast. And we had talked way back in like December. And I was like, yeah, book me anytime. And then I got this, the booking came through like in probably January for March. And you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then you forget about it. And all of a sudden one day I'm like, what's this on my calendar?
Right.
What's this? And I was kind of glad I was in the office so I could go into the studio. And they're easy to do, 30 minutes, pretty easy to put together. It was a ton of fun. It's a listen, I enjoy being on the other side of the microphone when it's not. I was on your show.
Makes it easier.
Enjoy that. I enjoy that side just as much as I enjoy this side.
Well, you want to hear a crazy story? I produce shows for other people as well, like Miss Fola and stuff.
Yeah.
And I worked with this PR firm, and the the owner, I guess, of the PR firm came on the show and was talking and left. Well, because she booked through the proper channels, she got all the information, the calendar links, all the stuff. She started handing that out to all of her clients.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, I got a whole bunch of people on the calendar that I had no idea who they were.
yeah. Yeah.
No, I was like, where are these people coming from?
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to figure it out, but I finally figured out who it was and how it was happening.
Mm,
It just took it upon
yeah.
themselves to just start booking the
Yeah.
show.
Wow.
So I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
That reminds me when I was in a band. I was in a church band, and the bass player he just wanted to play. Didn't matter where, he just wanted to play. So he started booking some dates. And I was like, Al, I can't. Like I can't I can't do these days. Like I have a life. Like you can't, we're not on the road, dude. Like, we're not getting paid for this, right? These are charity events. We're going and playing for old people or for youth groups or whatever. Right? So he's like, well, what days are you available? And I'm like, okay, I could do like a Tuesday and a Wednesday. It wasn't those days, but let's just say it was. He booked every Tuesday and Wednesday for 12 weeks. Like we played at every retirement facility, every, anybody who would say yes to us coming in, even some that didn't say yes, but we just showed up and for 12 weeks straight. And I remember these getting on the calendar. I'm like, what are you doing? He said, well, you said that you were open those days. And I was thinking he would, we'd do 3.
an occasional one.
Yeah, we did 20, you know. And when we got done, I said, okay, no more. I can't go. I can't do this every week. These are my days off. and I can't do this every week. So you have to be careful. I guess the point of the story is you have to be careful how you open your calendar, right, to people and say, oh, sure, you just pick all of a sudden fills
Yeah.
up, and that can be good, right? That can be good depending upon what you're. I'm at work. I'm thinking of a different model where I can interview more people, but have it take less time to produce it. Today we schedule an interview, we do a pre-call, we do the interview. That interview gets edited. It also gets full transcriptions, those made audio, video, podcast. It takes some time, right? You know the deal. You know how much time
Takes
it takes.
hours.
But I have way more people asking me, and I'd love to find a way to do it in a way that didn't necessarily have the requirements of all those steps. If I could just do the interview, but still do it in a way that was professional and had the tools, and people could access them. You know.
I get a lot of people when they come on, they think because it was live and it was live to YouTube that that's it, it's over. They
Mm-hmm.
don't realize it gets
Mm-hmm.
edited and put out as an
Mm-hmm.
audio piece either.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Even when Gina was on, she didn't realize that. She's like, "Wow, I didn't realize it was going to be like
Oh
this."
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always tell people the live is actually a really tiny part of, like, we do 5 or sometimes yeah, 5 to 6 here. The Gallup ones do 40 generally, 40 to 60. Sometimes it'll be more. I've had hundreds, right? But generally let's just say 50, right? People come on like how many were live? Oh, 50. Oh. I'm
Yeah,
like, dude, you don't realize you're going to get thousands of downloads on the podcast and a couple hundred listens on YouTube. Oh, okay. So yeah, they don't always realize, you're like, yeah, it's going to be a little different once we edit it. So,
well, it's also depending on the person. Like Gina was as nice as could be, but she didn't promote it at all.
right, right,
Not
right.
even a peep. But she, after it was over, she was happy. So then she promoted it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Which is smart.
audio got a
Which is
boost,
smart.
but the video got
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
But the guy
Yeah.
from the Oak Ridge Boys,
Yeah.
oh my lord, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I
Really?
was I was at the table with my wife and I opened up Twitter, and all of a sudden, all the members of the Oak Ridge Boys were following me.
Mm.
I told my wife, I said, "This is insane. Look at this." And then all of a sudden, every band member, all of the fans, and I was like, "What happened?" And I went on there, and they released it on their site.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, it
Nice.
got hundreds of people watching at that show.
That's cool.
I was like, okay,
That's
this is
cool.
cool. This is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. And you won't get them all to do that, but
No,
it's fun when they do. And then I think it's fun when you hit the right spot with it where they appreciate it. It's good for you. You have a good time. It was great information. Like it's nice when that happens. I think some podcasters go after famous people just for numbers. They're like,
you're
"Oh,
not
I
gonna
hope
get
that
them
happens." And you're like, "Well,
because they don't have the time to promote, nor do they want to
no,
promote.
nor do they want to,
No.
nor do they want to. I'm more interested in famous people like you who are interviewing what was the name of that group again? What brothers? The
Uh,
Oak Ridge Boys?
the Oak Ridge Boys.
Oak Ridge Boys. So you're famous because you interviewed the famous Oak Ridge Boys guy,
Sure,
whatever
yeah.
his name was. Yeah.
Dude, the band that was awesome was Von Ray because
Oh
they
yeah.
they laid it on the table. I mean, they told every story under the sun,
Wow.
everything anything you'd want them to talk about, they talked about, and they had a massive following watching the show live. They had a ton of comments coming through, and it's because they haven't played in a long time, so they've got all this fan base that hasn't seen them in a while, and they just all of a sudden out of the blue, they're playing and they're on the show, and people are excited to see them. So it was
How
just
did you
great.
get connected to them?
Um, I I worked in Orlando in the '90s, and they were the singer was just a local solo artist playing acoustic
Mm.
guitar in a bar, And I just used to go watch them play in the bar. And I kid you not when I say I was the only person, me and my girlfriend at the time were the only people in the room. The only people in the room. And his mother was selling merchandise in the back. It
Yeah.
was just the two of them. And within a year, they were selling out the House of Blues
Mm,
and all that stuff. And then they went on the road with Creed, and they released their
yeah.
debut album. And it,
Right.
it was just it was awesome to watch them do it all. I mean, they are the nicest people. The whole
That's
family
cool.
is super, super nice.
That's
But their
cool.
fan base was so loyal to them.
Mm.
I mean, huge. Like they played the House of Blues and a few other.
That's in Nashville, right?
This was in Orlando.
Or Orlando. Okay.
Yeah, I mean the line of people. I mean, it would seat thousands, and the line would be around the corner. So I mean, it was
Yeah.
it was big. And then when I was working in a studio in New York, Von Ray was touring, and they were with Creed, and the two of them came through and played in New York, and I got to see them play there too. So it was fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, as we wrap the post show, I'm going to say that the cask strength makers.
Yeah,
Uh, how are you doing on your Buffalo Trace?
I'm waiting for you to
That's all.
pour some in here.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me. Can you hold
Yeah,
on? Can
go
you
that way.
get that over
Oh,
a
there
little?
we go.
No, other way. You got to go the other way. Um, the uh, delicious, a little strong by itself. Like I think I bought some cinnamon liqueur that I might add to it, and not like hot cinnamon, like smooth, delightful, just that like Christmas cinnamon that you would have. I might add that to it. I might add a splash of water. This may be better with an ice cube, just to be honest, just to
Well, I know you
kind
got
of
the water tonight. Did
tone
you
it
put any in it?
down. Oh yeah, hold on. God, I'm a moron. Like, hold on. Let's let's just get a couple drops in there and see how it see if it tones it, because it's hot. I mean, it is at 55. Yeah, at 55 it's hot.
See, I love that. I love the burn and the.
Oh yeah, that toned it down a lot. That was just a few drops, maybe a few too many drops, but that definitely. So, ooh, that's tasty.
Brings out the flavors.
It is really yeah. That I probably should have done that. I know that trick, and I probably should have done that earlier. But it's
It just depends on
mm.
what you're going for. You going for the burn, or are you going for something smoother?
Yeah. Well, during the show, it'd have been helped to have something smoother.
A little smoother. Yeah, that's why
you
I'm
know.
with Buffalo Trace tonight.
Yeah. Mm. My bottle of Buffalo is unopened in the reserve area. It'll get pulled down at some point. But we have some Steeple Ridge, which is a local. They're just up the street. Not, but they're up in Iowa, but not too far. Got some Old Barton there in that's in that
It's
area too. I
Buffalo
got some,
Trace, isn't it?
yeah, I got some Old Barton 100. I think
Oh
I
no,
don't
that's
know.
Blanton's. Blanton's.
Yeah, Blanton's is definitely the Buffalo or Sazerac family. So I got some Old Barton's 100 up on the shelf. Of course, we have Jeff. I just finished the Ocean. We've got a reserve. I have Jeff Reserve and a reserve in rum casks, maybe, or I think one of those two. So we got some Jeff sitting up there. I got a Kansas City 4 wheat bourbon, which is really good, or 4 grain bourbon, which has been really good. We did the original makers.
That's what I
Man, that
have
makes a
over
good
there.
old fashioned. Gosh, that
I
makes
have
a
one
good
of
old
the
fashioned.
tiny bottles of that.
Yeah, yeah. That is. I keep coming back to that for old fashions. Those are really good. With that, I got a Japanese whiskey on the bar. So we got a
Yeah,
few to get through. We got a few to get through, and then I've been trying not to open too many bottles at a time. Just maybe have 4 to 6 that you can pull from.
yeah, I've got four that are open.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good number.
I have four, and then I have Fireball, which
Oh
they
yeah,
they just said it's now proven not whiskey.
yeah, that's probably true.
I'm like,
That's
I Still
That's
like it.
probably true. It's tasty. You like it straight, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'd mix it. I can't do that much cinnamon.
You see,
That's a lot of cinnamon.
even outside of the alcohol world, I love all the hot sauces and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Do you
Yeah.
ever watch the TV show Hot Ones or the
Uh-huh.
YouTube show Hot Ones?
Uh-huh.
My wife buys me that set for Christmas. So
Oh.
every Christmas I get a set of hot sauce.
Mm. Yeah, I can't do that. I can't I
I,
can't do that, Jay. I
I
can't
don't
do
know
it.
if I told you this, but my brother, he had a girlfriend he was trying to impress a while back and came over and he knows I'm into hot sauce and he comes up to me with a wink and a nod. Hey, do you have any of that spaghetti sauce that you make? I'd been telling her all about the spaghetti sauce you make. So he went in and he got the hot sauce and just put it on a slice of bread and handed it to her, lit her up like a Christmas tree.
Oh boy. Yeah. No, I can't. I get ill. If it's too hot, I have a physical reactions.
I'm starting to get
Um
old enough that I'm that bad.
yeah. Brian says his sinuses are clearing up just thinking about that hot sauce.
Dude, if you
Oh.
watch the hot ones, that last dab is no joke.
Joe says I love that hot sauce. Belize. Huh? It comes from Belize. Yeah, I can't do it. I don't I am weak when it comes to those kinds of, we'll throw a few chili peppers into some things, or we'll
Sometimes that
add
could be worse.
half the jalapeno in there. Yeah, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good. We've been doing some chili sauce stuff that's pretty tasty. Not hot, but tasty. It's got a little spice to it. I'll kick.
The the first sauce on hot ones is tastes amazing.
Mm,
I don't think it's hot at all. My
yeah.
wife is a baby when it comes to hot sauce, and she loves it.
Okay.
But it has like just an amazing flavor to it.
Hmm. You can
It's
just buy those sauces.
Yeah, you just go on the website
Okay.
and order. But
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
that's one's the classic. So it's the number one on the show, but it's classic hot sauce.
Huh. I'll have to check that out. I'm
And
I'm
even last dab tastes good. It's hot.
Yeah, I can't do that. My number 4 son, Tim, or Timmy as I like to call him, he can do some hot. He can do some hot for sure, but I don't know where he got that from cuz I can't.
I
I
always say my
can't.
mother burnt my taste buds out when I was a kid.
She liked it hot.
Yeah. I don't remember my dad ever liking the spice, but my mother did.
Yeah.
But the hot ones that set I don't think I never think hot sauce is bad when you build up from one to the other. So
Yeah.
like when you're on that show and
Yeah.
you gradually go up, it's not so bad. But going straight for the last one it's
Oh.
painful.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. I misread. Joe said imported from Belize. He said not imported from Belize. He says imported from Belize. He goes, I don't know about those on the show, but Marie Sharps is what I get from Belize. So,
I'll have to try
guys, if you're
that too.
listening live, thanks for. I got to get Jay back to. He's going to turn into a pumpkin here in a second.
Please don't send me
So
back to the wave.
we gotta we gotta send we, we got to send them back and get Brian and Joe. Thanks for hanging around. I'm sure there's one more Bob. Maybe you're still out there. I don't know who's still out there. They see 3, but I only see 2 in the chat. So whoever it is, quick, get it
I
in
just
quick.
realized I can't see that as a guest.
No, you should be able to see. Or you go over to the right and choose the comment tab.
Yeah, I can see that. I can't see like normally on the top left of the screen, it shows you who's there or how many people.
Oh no, you can't. Yeah, you can't see it from this side. Yeah. We had just a handful tonight. So, well, it's a mystery guest. Guys, thanks for coming out. We'll see you next week. Uyghur's back. I hope Uyghur's back. I'll confirm with him later on tomorrow.
Hey,
But
one more
yeah,
thing before you
yeah,
go. Your
yeah.
daughter's episode was great.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, she had a good time. One of the things, she just sounded happy, and it's been a while since we've maybe been there. So
No, I mean she
a little
seemed
therapeutic for Dad.
well, that's good. I know how it feels. 3 daughters of my own. I know how it feels when they're not happy.
Yeah.
But she seemed happy. She
Yeah.
seemed, very thrilled with being in the library. And
Yeah.
that's one thing
Yeah.
here in Kentucky. My wife is big into the library, and their system is a lot like what she was describing.
Mm.
So all the events and the different types of
Yeah.
sections of the
Yeah.
library I've never been to a library as much as I have since I've lived in Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, that's good. She she sent me a text today. She's like, "Dad, if you come in with your old card, I'll set it back up with your old number." Because I have my library card's 20 years old. Like, we set that up when we first moved to town. I've never used it, but she seemed really happy. Night, Joe. Good to see you, Brian. Thanks for coming out. All right, guys. We will see you next week. Take care. Jay,